Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and I know a lot of you are waiting for the next tier list, and there's been a big shakeup at the top, especially as Black Widow and Yelena dismantle piece by piece every other character in PvP. You love to see it, and it's amazing, but I still have not come up with, cooked up yet, a good enough tier list to really reflect where the game is right now, because the game is in a weird place. And more than that, I'm waiting on the Netmarble monster devs, the Marvel Future Fight devs, to really shake up Timeline Battle or Conquest or maybe Shadowland or maybe Giant Boss Raid. Like one or two game modes. I mean, frankly, all those game modes need a facelift, but we need something new to sort of give us a reevaluation of characters' value, because it's just right now it's still very hard to tell characters apart from each other. Obviously, you have like the upper echelons. But besides that, a lot of characters just fit into this weird nebulous place in the middle where they're like pretty good, but just not good enough. They're not god tier, but they're not trash. And then everyone else is just trash. So it's like this weird sort of three group pairing. So what I thought to do instead of doing a tier list video, because a lot of people asked me for a tier list video, but I was like, you know what? Tier list video is just not, you know, it's going to be like, okay, I move this character here, Yelena, Black Widow, blah, blah, blah. And it's just not going to be that interesting. It's not going to be that helpful. I came up with something new. So this is the Marvel Future Fight. Have I done this before? I don't know. This is the Marvel Future Fight 6.0.5. No CTP tier list. That's right. So I'm going to let you take a look at it now, and I'm going to let that sink in. There's more to talk about here. There has been a redistribution of characters, but the main key point here, especially for the first three tiers, and especially, that's Couscous, especially for the first two tiers, Omega and Mythic tier. This is considering all characters at their highest level, whether it's tier 3, tier 270, tier 260, with their best uniform maxed out. Everything else can be maxed out, but you do not have access to CTPs. So just, you know, theorize the best rolled obelisk that you can get, and that would be what the character has. And that's what this CTP, no CTP tier list is. And I'm gonna put this on my Discord so you guys can find it. But I want to start off by explaining what I've done in addition to considering these characters without CTPs. Okay, so I consider all these characters without CTPs. I paid particular attention. I basically went through step by step with every character in the first three tiers. To be honest with you, I did not consider too much the characters in the last 5 tiers, because like I said, the characters here outside of Legendary, they're just sort of in like this weird nebulous place. Everyone in Heroic, Rare, and Advanced, they're just kind of like okay. They're just not great at anything. They're Shadowland characters. They're just like It's like, you know, tofu, right? If you spruce it up and you make it better, sure, but it's never going to be like the real thing. And then all the characters over here are just yikes. They're just in the yikes. They're basically on the yikes tier. But you're going to notice that this looks substantially different from the regular tier list than before. And the one I had before. And the reason for that is I essentially took almost all of the characters from the normal tier and I put them into the yikes tier. So the yikes tier is a lot bigger. And the yikes tier is just basically characters that are just really bad and all they do is low-level Shadowland. Like they literally offer almost no other value in the game besides Shadowland, like 30, not even 30, like 20 and under. That's literally all they can do. The characters in normal tier have a little bit more value beyond Shadowland stage 20. They can do a little bit of something else. And then everyone from advanced tier onwards, not only can they go much higher in Shadowland, they can do 30, 40, 50, but they can also bring something to the table regarding like a key leadership or a key support, key passive type thing. So you got your Beasts, you've got your Misty Knights, you've got your Red Hulks and your Titanias and your Warwolves, you've got your Wiccans and your Phil Coulsons. Like these characters have some value, but they're not, they might not be very good, right? But, you know, Phil Coulson has value, Kingpin's just straight up trash. Yeah, sure, Yellow Jacket is better than Phil Coulson for Shadowland, but you shouldn't really be deciding on these characters based on Shadowland. Like you should have a better option than these two characters. There's so many other blast types, just blast types, let alone the other three types. So I just thought that it's more important to make a differentiation between the characters in advanced tier and these two tiers. It doesn't really matter, CTP or not, these are going to be trash characters, right? So better to make some sort of differentiation between them based on what they're bringing to the team. Now, a couple of ones that you may disagree with me on here, Ironheart and Lincoln Campbell. Yes, they are leaderships, but Ironheart's leadership is actually found in a lot of other leaderships. A 45% energy attack is not that rare. I mean, you just off the top of my head, Anti-Man, Ebony Maw, Hela. There's plenty of 45% energy attack leads. Plenty. And then Lincoln Campbell, while he does have a very unique leadership, 60% lightning damage, it only applies to like 3 characters. There's like 3 good lightning damage characters, and I can only honestly name 2. I can name Thor and Storm. That's it. Storm is like half lightning. She's not even full lightning. So yeah, he doesn't really compare to, in this case, where is she? Misty Knight. The reason why Misty Knight is an advanced, sure, Misty Knight really only buffs Gwenpool and Luna Snow, but you need Misty Knight for a lot of content. Squad battle, ABX, right? Like there's a cascading event. You don't need Lincoln for any content. So on top of the fact that he only buffs a few characters like Misty Knight, he just doesn't, none of those characters are meta for anything. So it's even doubly worse, right? But anyways, focusing now on these tiers and some really interesting drop-offs. I want to talk about the drop-offs first. So these are characters who, with a CTP, are very, very good. They're probably either in Omega or Mythic tier, but without a CTP, they either drop down to Mythic tier or they drop down to Legendary tier. So I want to talk about those characters first. So I actually put Luna Snow beneath Mystique. It's a very small drop off for her, but I'll start here because we don't have anyone to talk about that's in Omega tier that dropped out. Because if you're still in Omega tier, you didn't drop from anywhere. The reason why I put Luna Snow below Mystique is that without a CTP of any kind, without a CTP of Rage or a CTP of Judgment, Luna Snow becomes very difficult to play. Yes, you can do like a double cold damage proc, and she's very, very good, but she becomes substantially worse and substantially more annoying to play. So I gotta take this away because we don't have this icon anymore for this particular tier list. Because she's substantially more annoying to play, because she's substantially less consistent, she actually is going to lose a lot of damage in the long run over tons of runs, whereas Mystique, although she's best with Rage, she can do really well with a proc because her main combo is 3 cancel 4, cancel 5, or 3 cancel 6, and those rotations don't actually have a lot of inconsistencies. Her 3 doesn't do any damage, doesn't have any hits at the beginning, so when you cancel it out, you never worry about accidentally proccing. 3 cancel 6 is a guaranteed land on 6 hit, and there's tons of hits at the beginning to start it up. So Mystique actually does much better with a proc obelisk than Luna Snow does. Whereas Luna Snow, it's awkward, like 1 cancel 3 or 1 cancel 2 proc, and then you're doing everything, you're spamming everything else in between, trying to build up your tier 3 skill, and then trying to proc on your tier 3 skill is a nightmare without a CTP of Rage or Judgment. She's still very good, don't get me wrong, but she slips a little bit compared to Mystique, and Mystique is actually very, very good for World Boss. Possibly better than Luna Snow because she's more flexible. She could do multiple world bosses, Thanos, Corvus, Proxima, whereas Luna is almost exclusively locked into Ebony Moss. I thought that one was really, really interesting. Another one that dropped off substantially is Mr. Fantastic. He was here in the middle of Mythic tier. Without a CTP, Mr. Fantastic just gets exposed. He has low damage on all of his skills, and his tier 3 is basically the only skill that he has good damage on. But the problem with Mr. Fantastic is it's a pain in the ass to proc, because like a lot of other combat characters, you can't cancel his skills and get the effects. As soon as you cancel one of his skills, you lose the effect. And so, put that away, dude. I've told you this before. And so because of that, yeah, I use the same joke again. Don't worry about it. And so because you can't really cancel any of his skills, you're sort of just praying and hoping that when you press the 6th skill, his tier 3, that it's going to proc. If your proc activates, great. You get some substantial damage. If it doesn't proc, you're shit out of luck. You're SOL. And his damage is just goes down the gutter. So yeah, he's actually worse than Crescent without a CTP, because in Crescent's case, she applies all defense down on her tier 3 skill. Crescent has some value in PvP as well. She has self-healing. She's got a lot more weapons at play, you know, ignore, dodge. She's got reflect, a lot of different weapons that make her usable, whereas Mr. Fantastic is literally just damage, which doesn't even translate well without all defense down or without a rage proc or a CTP of energy to take advantage of chain hit, to take advantage of decreasing the boss's defense. So that one was really interesting to see and to sort of conceptualize. Definitely the biggest drop off, the biggest no CTP drop off has to be Captain Marvel. She drops off from Omega tier, or maybe she was Mythic tier, all the way down to Legendary tier. And man, it's true. It's true. Captain Marvel without a CTP of Rage is basically not useless, but she's extremely low value for PvE content, for world boss content, because she's very squishy, she dies very easily, and a regular proc just doesn't really work with her. All of her skills have low-ish cooldown except for 5, and then 5 has a really long cooldown, so you have a very tough time proccing on 4 consistently for your proc, and then if you miss that, You got to just like scramble to press 3. And then for PvP, she is good. I mean, Captain Marvel's still good for PvP because she has the iframe ignore on 4. But unlike other characters, she doesn't really have many ways of protecting herself outside 4 and 5. So if you don't have 5 up and they've already taken off your guard hit, you really only have 4. And if you don't have CTP, you don't have any penetration. Not having any penetration means that you're just basically trying to stall until you get binary break to get that penetration. Unlike other characters that we're seeing nowadays with iframe ignore, like Yelena and Black Widow, not only do they have iframe ignore, but they have invisibility. So that matters because the invisibility will last even if your iframe stops. So it's a really important thing to realize. With Captain Marvel, her damage is tied to the skill that iframe ignores. So if you interrupt the skill, or if you just don't die during the skill, when she comes out of it, she's immediately vulnerable. Whereas with Yelena and Black Widow, when the skill is over, or if they cancel the skill, they're fine because they still have the invisibility, plus they have self buffs that they can access. And because of the invisibility, they can actually charge their tier 3 skill a lot faster by canceling skills. Captain Marvel cannot skill cancel because, like I said, only one of her skills gives her iframe ignore, and it's only for the duration of the skill. So she actually gets exposed as much worse without a CTP. So I thought that was super interesting to see her drop so much. A couple of others that dropped a lot from the mythic tier down to legendary: Iron Man and Cyclops. Iron Man just doesn't have a good setup for a regular proc. He doesn't really do enough damage on any one of his skills. He sort of has decent damage across the board, and yeah, he has all defense down, which is great. And there's synergy there with strikers and stuff, but it's just not enough on its own to really push him beyond what some of these other characters can do when you're considering them all with procs instead of any sort of CTP. And then he has very limited, if any, PvP value like Cyclops. Now, Cyclops is an interesting one because most other characters that have elemental damage, if you notice in the Mythic and Omega tier, they stayed there. Elemental damage is actually super strong in PvE content, and it's decent in PvP content if you're fighting someone that's not Jean Grey or Thanos, because most characters don't have any resistance to elements. So you see here Captain America, I've got poison resist and lightning resist. I'm pretty sure it's from my cards. Okay, lightning resist is from my cards. I don't know why he has 10% poison resist, but you can sort of tell that most characters just don't have any resistances, right? That 5% lightning is from my cards. They just don't, right? Most characters just don't have. Okay, he has a little bit there. He's got some cold damage, or some cold resist and some fire resist, but most characters have very little, if any. He's got a little bit of mind resist, 10% here from this. So besides not Luna Snow, besides Jean Grey and Thanos, most characters just don't have any. Their base resist is 0, and so because of that, you can actually scale your damage up and do a lot of damage in PvP with an elemental attack. Not to mention that if they don't have debuff, you can scale resistance down. So like Apocalypse is still so godly. Scarlet Witch actually gains a lot of value from not having a CTP because you can run like a double mind damage proc. And now with her new uniform, she skill cancels a lot more easily. So she could stack up a ton of mind defense down and stack up a ton of extra mind damage for herself on top of what the proc obelisk will offer. We've seen how godly Professor X is. Forgo did a stage 99 with the old strikers, right? It doesn't work anymore. But at tier 2, he was able to clear stage 99 with a proc obelisk, which shows just how insanely powerful it is when you scale tons of one type of elemental damage with a character that deals that elemental damage with all of their attacks. So yeah, all of the elemental characters that were there, you know, Apocalypse, you have Apocalypse, yeah, Namor with his uniform, Luna Snow, we've talked about her, Professor X, Scarlet Witch, Blue Dragon, Psylocke, all of these characters still do very well. Thanos actually drops out of Omega tier because without the access to a CTP, he does lose quite a lot of his value. He can still be very good for PvP with an obelisk, but he basically can no longer do any kind of PvE content. Doctor Doom actually gains a lot of value. If the game didn't allow CTPs, Doctor Doom would be very good. A lot of people forget how good Doctor Doom is. He's got the revive. He's got the base penetration chance on all of his skills, 50% chance. He's got damage reduction. He's got ignore dodge, not iframe ignore. He's got ignore dodge. He's got crazy healing, long iframes. He's got all defense down, invincibility. He's really good. And so because of that, I think he would actually flourish quite a lot, and he can do decent PvE content already. And then pretty much the rest of the list sort of boils down the way you would expect it to. Molten Man jumps up a little bit, again, because of the elemental damage. And then the rest of the blast characters sort of fall into place. Nimrod and Silver Surfer still do amazingly. Silver Surfer, he has just very hard-hitting damage and high all defense down. Nimrod has even higher all defense down. Gwenpool actually goes above Dr. Octopus because her cold damage is crazy. Try her against Proxima with like Misty Knight lead. It's just absolutely bonkers. Spider-Man and Viper are there because actually Spider-Man doesn't, but Viper gains value from the poison damage obelisk that she would get. And Spider-Man, I think, actually loses value. Yeah, I bolded Spider-Man because he loses value. The reason why Spider-Man loses value is because he doesn't have much value in PvE unless he's got a rage, so he doesn't have access to that anymore. And then if he doesn't have access to a CTP of destruction for PvP, I would actually guess that Spider-Man would be pretty awful for PvP. Now, I'm not saying Spider-Man is almost as good as Viper. That's not what I'm saying. Like, there's a huge gap between Spider-Man and Viper. But what I'm saying is that without the penetration from a CTP of destruction, you're going to have a lot of deadlocks where he's going to chip someone down to half. They're going to pop their invincibility obelisk, and then they're going to heal back up or whatever. Or they're going to iframe, and you're just going to have that in perpetuity because he can't finish them off. So I think that's really important to see that and recognize that. Another one I want to talk about was Victorious. Yeah, Victorious also dropped tremendously. I believe she was at the bottom of Mythic tier, and she dropped to Heroic tier. Victorious is just really bad without a CTP of Rage. She only has 4 skills, so she's automatically dealing at minimum 20% less damage than most other characters because she just doesn't have 5 skills. And although she does have some all defense down and she's got some other tricks up her sleeve, the Rage really helps to synergize her damage and really allows you to build her differently. But without that, it's just like she really struggles. Like the 60% guaranteed crit is really like a huge and sometimes overlooked reason for why Rage works so well on her, because she just crits all the time, right? But if you don't have, if that 60% guaranteed crit is not really doing much because it's not activating a Rage proc, it's just not happening, right? And then if you've got a regular obelisk, yeah, you can build her for HP, but most of the time it's not going to scale up well enough to do enough damage, and then you can't go with something else. So you're basically stuck with a situation where the character is just going to perform, like sub-perform and underperform based on what you expect them to do when they had a CTP. The rest of the characters, honestly, I don't think they gain or lose too much. Obviously, if they all had CTPs of Rage, they'd be better, and if they all didn't, they'd be worse. That sort of goes without saying. But I don't think any of these characters in particular jump a ton by not having CTPs. But of course, I did reorganize the list. I actually didn't even finish explaining what I did. But after I moved, after I moved the normal tier characters into the Yikes tier, I basically just did that same thing where I moved most of the advanced tier characters into normal, I moved most of the rare tier characters into advanced, and I moved some of the heroic tier into rare and some of the legendary tier into heroic, and I just basically stopped. So that's why it looks sort of weird and sort of staircasey now, but I think this is a better interpretation of characters' value, especially if they don't have CTPs. So, sorry to half explain the reorganization in the video, but yeah, let me know what you guys think of the no CTP tier list. Let me know if you change anything about it. I can definitely update this in the coming days to better reflect the accuracy of characters' value without CTPs, but assuming they have like the optimal obelisk, whether it's invincibility or damage proc. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.